All right, ladies and gentlemen, on that note, welcome to the Radulich and Broadcasting Network movie review group. I think we're a group, more so than a club. We don't charge dues. We don't have a house. And if you don't have a clubhouse, you can't really be a club. So the Radulich and Broadcasting Network movie review group, I'm Robert Winfree. Hi, everybody. Tonight, Mark and I will be reviewing Pixar's latest movie, The Good Dinosaur. Look, guys, sometimes I joke that Mark and I are going to have reviews where we yell at each other, where we disagree. Here's a quick preview. Unlikely to happen tonight. Mark, go ahead and tell them why you and I are unlikely to disagree about this movie.
This is a perfectly adequate film. Did not inspire a tremendous amount of debate or discord, and certainly not a tremendous amount of analysis. It kind of just is what it is, and it's fine. And, Robert and I kind of both reached the same conclusion. It's like, Forbes has an article that says The Good Dinosaur is to Pixar what Ant-Man was to Marvel. So, that's a pretty good descriptor.
Well, I'm not sure the Pixar-Marvel analogy is completely apt, because Marvel has yet to actually fall on their face, and Pixar has Cars too.
Boys love Cars.
I'm not saying I don't understand why. Cars 2 and the forthcoming Cars 3 are blatant cash grabs. I imagine mandated by Disney.
Do you know how many cars my son has, and he's one?
Again, I understand it. I mean creatively. As a movie, okay. Cars 2 is a monumental and utter failure.
You're talking critically. And critically,
yes.
The Good Dinosaur is a very average movie. It looks gorgeous. It's probably the best-looking Pixar movie. In terms of pure aesthetic, I thought it was the only thing that was superior to Inside Out. In terms of story and everything else that you would do a critical analysis of, Inside Out beats the shit out of this. And most of Pixar's, it's getting a lot of comparisons to Monsters University, which, you keep, and others keep complaining about Cars 2. I would tell you Monsters University was markedly worse than Cars 2.
I would fundamentally disagree with you.
Are you kidding me?
No. Cars 2 is a soulless, heartless cash grab aimed at children. That is the sum total of what that movie is. And
what was Monsters University? Other than an
Monsters University at least had
on the Monsters Universe, on the Monsters Inc. brand.
At least Monsters University had a legitimate story, had character arcs, had, stuff that you actually cared about. Cars 2 was, hey, let's take Lightning McQueen, put him in France, and make him a spy.
I love that idea. It sounds brilliant.
Yes, but you also like Transformers.
Boo! Plugs! All right, let's get on with this.
All right, lest we devolve into silliness, debating the quality of various Pixar movies, which Mark and I will probably do at some point, because why not?
Probably.
All right, The Good Dinosaur opened over the holiday weekend, opened Wednesday, so as to capitalize on the full... Good.
It's currently only got $87 million worldwide on a $200 million budget, which sounds like, oh my God, this thing is bombed. But it's still got a bunch of international markets to open in. It's going to be in theaters pretty much through the end of the year. So it's got plenty of time to make that money. And even if it doesn't approach, it probably will, but let's say it doesn't approach the $200 million that it costs. With kids' movies, especially the Pixar Disney type, there's rewatchability in spades. Parents will buy their kids the DVD. So,
releasing a movie at this time of year, the beginning or end, is very different from the summer. The summer, you have if you're lucky, 2 weeks without major competition. That's if you're very lucky. At the end of the year, I mean, look, there's no other family movies out right now. I mean, the other thing you have is the Peanuts movie, which has been out for a couple of weeks. So there's very little, there's very little competition within the market space. And it will hang around in theaters, again, the rest of the month, probably a little bit into January. There's very little that is going to push it out, especially in certain markets. Like where I live, for example.
Let's actually talk about the weekend for a minute. So here was your top 10 for the weekend, November 27th through November 29th. So you have the Hunger Games, right, which is just walking away with the box office. It was number 1 2 weeks in a row. It's doing so well that my wife actually thought it was number 1. It had come out this past weekend. I'm like, nope, that's weekend. We're on weekend number 2 with this thing.
Yeah.
And it's still the number 1 movie.
It came out over the holiday weekend, so that Wednesday before Thanksgiving.
Did it? Oh, it came out. It released November 20th. I said it was a week before.
Oh, okay. My apologies.
Yeah, so The Good Dinosaur came in at number 2. So the weekend gross for the Hunger Games was $52 million. The Good Dinosaur was $39 million. I'm rounding, by the way. And then Creed came in third, which was about what was expected, at $29 million. Rounding out the top 5, you have Spectre, which raked in another $12 million, and the Peanuts, which raked in another $9 million. To your point, the only other, Victor Frankenstein, which also debuted the same weekend as The Good Dinosaur and Creed, $2 million.
Yeah, that movie has bombed pretty hard. Which is, look, as much as we predicted that, I feel kind of bad for it. I've some people whose perspective, even if I don't always agree with, I respect, have told me that it's actually entertaining at the very least. And again, I have no plans to see it in theaters, but I might, when it gets to the Dollar Theater around here, I might try to go see it just because, again, apparently it's at least a fun, entertaining ride. And I can respect that.
So those are your top 5, The Hunger Games, The Good Dinosaur, Creed, Spectre, and the Peanuts movie. So to your point, if you're taking the kids Thanksgiving weekend, if you were one of the crazy people who decided to go breathe free air on Black Friday and, amongst the masses, and you decide to you happen to go to the movies, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, and you got kids, your choices were The Good Dinosaur, or the Peanuts, which has already been out for a couple of weeks, or, the night before, starring...
that is not a kid's movie.
Just kidding. That came out at number 6, by the way, for the weekend.
It should have done lower. It's another one of those stupid Seth Rogen bromance get-drunk comedies. They're not funny, people.
You know what's still making money and was 2 points higher than Victor Frankenstein? The Martian. The Martian came in at number 10 over the weekend, made another $3 million.
Look, quality filmmaking in an uncontested space, and there is no competition for dramatic science fiction movies at the moment. It's going to be fine until Star Wars comes out.
The Martian's killing it. $218 million total gross on a $108 million budget.
Yeah, that's going to be a big financial success for that studio at the end of the day.
20th Century Fox, baby. They're going to need it after Victor Frankenstein.
On to The Good Dinosaur.
No, let's talk about more. Let's talk more money.
We can in a bit. Let me at least do the plot overview.
Plot? Smart. Go ahead.
All right. Pixar has this really great ability to take traditional kind of story outlines, stuff that fits within a different genre, and adapt it to whatever happens to strike the creative fancy of those people over there. You talked about it. The first Toy Story movie is about loss of faith. By and large, to varying degrees with the different characters and aimed at various other characters, but fundamentally it's about the loss and the refinding of faith. Ratatouille is about self-confidence and overcoming potential prejudice and stereotypes. All of these kind of overarching themes that they can kind of twist around to whatever they want to do with it, and they do it very, very well. I mean, again, The Incredibles is still the best Fantastic Four movie ever put to film. By a wide margin, people, it's not that close. No, seriously, not that close. The only thing that comes close is probably the unreleased Roger Corman version. And please consider that for a minute. No, seriously.
There's nothing wrong with the first Fantastic Four movie that Fox put out.
Jessica Alba's in it, and she's just kind of terrible.
Jessica Alba is a nice pair of boobs. You leave that nice girl alone.
I disagree with your assessment.
Wait a minute. Stop the podcast. You're going to sit here. You are a red-blooded American male.
Yes, sir.
Presumably heterosexual, and you're going to sit there and tell me that Jessica Alba is not a nice set of boobs? I mean, I'm not talking about her acting ability here or her presence as a human being. I'm saying, in no uncertain terms, Jessica Alba's sum total is she's a nice pair of boobs, and you're going to say no? How do you disagree with them?
I find it uncomfortable to be attracted to her because it makes me feel like a pedophile. She looks like a small child. She's not, though. I'm going to do some math on this. You keep going with your analysis of the Good Dinosaur, and I'm going to take you off the hook for lusting after Jessica Alba. Go ahead. Well, again, I'm just saying I don't find her that attractive. I understand why other people do. I just don't.
You sir, are a lunatic.
No, I'm simply very aware of my preferences.
What year are you born?
Again, let's not do that, all right? I am well aware that that's not the actual case, all right? I'm just saying.
She was born in 1981.
Yeah, she's actually older than I am. I am aware of this.
Okay, all right, I'm dropping the subject.
She just looks like a small child.
All right. I feel you getting uncomfortable. I can feel your sweat on me, so I'm moving on from this.
Anyway, the point being that with The Good Dinosaur, Pixar took what is really just kind of a traditional Western coming-of-age story and adapted it to fit within dinosaurs. And they did it very well, as far as that goes. Our main character, our protagonist, is Arlo. He is a brontosaurus. Or an apatosaurus. I think brontosaurus. We'll go with that.
He's an apatosaurus is what he is. He's an
apatosaurus. Okay.
Are we both saying the same thing but pronouncing it differently? Yes. Apatosaurus.
Yeah, he's an apatosaurus. He is born onto a farm with his father, mother, 2 siblings. The underlying premise of why dinosaurs are farming and speaking is that the asteroid that struck the Earth off the Yucatan Peninsula, 60 million years ago, it missed. Now, this is my only... Let me get this out of the way before I finish the plot here. My only gripes with this movie have nothing to do with the movie itself. It has to do with some of the science behind it, which, again, is not an issue for a kid's movie. I am aware it's not a legitimate criticism, so please don't yell at me. But dinosaurs have now evolved the ability to speak, and they are farmers or ranchers or meth heads in some cases. And yes, it made me laugh, and you can share your joke. Anyway, Arlo is a very timid person, a very timid dinosaur. He has trouble fitting in with his, brother and sister who are adventurous, strong. He's the runt of the litter. His father, keeps trying to, not very long, because again, it's a Disney movie. One of the parents is going to die. That's how that works. Being a parent in a Disney movie is a very hazardous occupation. There's at least a 50% mortality rate.
You're gonna die. You're gonna die.
Yeah. Anyway, they have created, there's a lot of, kind of small symbolism in it, but while attempting to catch a small human, that is referred to as a critter, Arlo and his father are caught in a flash flood. His father, Henry, is killed. He now has to deal with some of the guilt about that and his fear of, violent thunderstorms, which is a pretty legitimate fear as far as look, there are legitimate fears and illegitimate fears. Being afraid of violent thunderstorms is a relatively legitimate fear. Moths, clowns, not so much. Anyway, Arlo finds this same critter again and chases him in, a bit of emotional rage. They wind up falling into the river, and he strikes a rock because apparently he was never taught how to properly, go down a river with rapids. I shouldn't criticize him. It took me a while to blur. I don't know. But he strikes his head, is rendered unconscious, avoids drowning somehow, washes up quite a ways away from his home. The human, who is named Spot, is not too far from him. Now he has to get home, and he is, lost in a strange land, but he comes to understand and accept the human as not being responsible for his father's death. They get along. They meet some cultist, fanatical pterodactyls that are, that follow this giant storm around apparently and, eat whatever is wounded by it. They also meet some T-Rexes, because every dinosaur movie ever must have the Tyrannosaurus Rex, that are ranchers. Well, because I imagine ranching your own food supply is easier than, raiding the local farm for a good Apatosaurus steak. I don't know. He helps them. He, discovers a bit of his courage, finds his way back home, has to say goodbye to the human Spot right before he gets home because there's another family of humans. I believe they're referred to as Neanderthals in a couple of the reviews, so I'm not sure how far along the spectrum of human evolution we are at this point, though, again, don't yell at me if you're religious and don't believe in human evolution. I'm just quoting what, the underlying themes of the movie here. So they bid their tearful farewell. Arlo returns home having discovered his courage and, effectively, come of age, since that it's a coming of age story. Mark, you touched on it when we, at the top of the show, but this is, I think, hands down the best looking Pixar movie ever. I mean,
okay,
go ahead and make your points. I'm going to throw it to you because I have some points to make about computer-generated imagery that needs to be discussed in the context of this movie.
All right, so my initial reaction, both my kids, first of all, I always, I bring my kids to these things, and my son's not super good about sitting in the theater, but we figured since he's got a big thing for dinosaurs, Jonas with the dinosaur say, roar, that's what he answers. So we figured this would capture his interest, and then when he saw the commercial for it, he got very excited. He had a little trouble sitting through it at the end, and he was kind of getting up and wanting to run around. My daughter's reaction to it was when the father died, she got very worried about myself and her mother and made a point of saying, I don't want you to die too. And she, 4, almost 5 years old, has a handle on what death is, and was definitely touched by that scene. And she ended up cuddling with my wife, when that was all said and done. Other stuff she thought she liked. She liked a lot of the physical humor in it. I had 2 thoughts when I left the theater. One, it's a gorgeous-looking movie. It's probably one of the best-looking animated movies I've seen in a long time. I mean, when you consider where we've come in 15 years with CGI, you make the joke about Congo or the Phantom Menace, looking like video games, to where we are now, where you produce an animated feature which looks more realistic than the Phantom Menace in Congo. It was incredible. The other predominant thought I had was this was the Lion King. And the only difference for me between this and The Lion King was I liked Arlo more than I did Simba. You know, where Simba is a jerk, I thought Arlo was a more sympathetic character. So I was more into his journey. But basically, like, I mean, when they go into that ravine and the water comes, I'm like, well, the father's dead. You can see that coming a mile away, and I'm not that great at making predictions in movies. But I'm just like, yep, the father's gone, and now the son's going to be, you know, go off on an adventure and, you know, and have to find his courage, which is fine. You know, I'm fine with a movie about, you know, a runt who has to find his inner courage and, you know, and rise up to life's challenges. And what I liked about this movie is that they did, much like my comments about Charlie Brown, they take you just to the edge where you start to turn away from the character and stop so that you don't. So he's just fraidy cat enough, you know, he's just fearful enough where he's got a hurdle to overcome, an internal hurdle, but he's not so fearful that you just like, you know what, I hope you drown in the fucking river. You still root for this character. And the only really shitty thing he does is when Spot had an opportunity to go live with the, I guess we'll call them Neanderthals, the Neanderthals, he becomes very selfish and possessive of Spot and says, no, we're going home, and denies him that opportunity. But then at the end of the movie has a change of heart and, you know, and believes that, you know, Spot belongs with his family just as Arlo belongs with his. And I thought that was great. The movie is 100 minutes. It could have stood to be 10 minutes shorter. So it was a little long for a kid's movie. I didn't think I just felt like they could have cut 10 minutes out of that thing, and it might have been a little bit easier for the other kids in the audience to deal with. And say what you will about attention deficit disorder and a kid's ability to sit through a 100-minute film. There were definitely some lulls in the action that I could have done without. So that was really my whole thing with the movie. To me, like I said, it's another Lion King archetype with better characters. I enjoyed the idea of the dinosaurs sort of evolving and taking on the road to civilization, you know, farming, ranching, that sort of thing. I liked the adventure that Arlo and Spot went on. I thought the Methosauruses were great, and they've always been. I know they're velociraptors. I don't care. They're Methosauruses.
They're hillbillies on meth. It's okay.
So I enjoyed all of that. I enjoyed the Tyrannosaurus Rex characters, one of which is played by former Rogue Anna Paquin. Glad she didn't get cut out of the movie this time. So I mean, but that's it. I mean, it was an average kids movie. If I didn't know that Disney produced this, and the fact that it looked marvelous, I would have assumed it was a dreamscape. You know, it was a dreamscape. No, that's a
DreamWorks.
Thank you. I would, you could have convinced me it was a DreamWorks picture.
I don't think I'm not quite there with you on that one, but I understand your point.
I mean, it was, like I said, it was a perfectly average film. I have not been moved in any emotional way by anything DreamWorks has put out. I've been entertained. I thought The Penguins of Madagascar was hilarious, but I mean, like anytime I see a DreamWorks movie, you're not getting that sort of emotional heft that you get with a Pixar film. You know, like Toy Story 3, Inside Out, Up, the first 10 minutes of it at least. You know, that sort of thing. I can't recall of a DreamWorks picture that made me feel that way, and this didn't either.
What you react to emotionally is very much your own thing. Personally speaking, I reacted a lot more emotionally to this than I did to Inside Out.
Really? Explain to me why.
I don't know why.
Think a little, for God's sakes. Talk to Dr. Mark. I want to know.
You are not my doctor, sir.
I'm not a doctor at all. In all seriousness, and I'm really not trying to be. I'm not trying to put you on the spot or anything, but intrusive. But I'm curious, what about this movie spoke to Robert Winfree that did not speak to Mark Radulich?
I couldn't tell you what didn't speak to you. I know that oh, whoa. Okay, we're not going to go down that road.
Was it the fearfulness of Arlo? Was it the
No,
relationship between the dad and him?
No, I think it had to do more with, oh, Jesus.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. Hang on.
Do I need to play music? Da-da-da-da-da. We are experiencing technical difficulties.
No, it's... just, kind of a rough time of year.
Oh, okay.
And just dealing with loss on... Oh, God, I am not going to break down on the air. I'm not going to do it.
Okay, I didn't mean to poke. Do we need to take a break?
Nah, we're all right.
Okay, well, breathe. Take a breath.
It's mostly dealing with loss, I think, is what kind of triggered within me.
Okay.
Because the emotions brought up in Inside Out are displacement, are fear, are, worrying about finding your place under new circumstances, and those are easy for me. I mean, I don't, this isn't my biography here or anything, but I moved around a lot as a kid. My dad was in the Army in the, late 80s, to early 90s, and Bill Clinton decided to shut down, military bases like it was going out of style. So before I was out of grammar school, I had lived in Utah, California, Washington, Arizona, North Dakota, Oregon, and then back to Utah. So I had moved many times. I had dealt with the emotions associated with it. So a lot of the stuff that Pixar triggers, or that Inside Out triggers, is stuff that I personally have dealt with. Many times in the past, again, when I'm sitting in a theater, I'm not saying I don't react emotionally to it, but I have a handle on it.
Okay.
I get, again, I understand, a lot of Riley's emotions I understood. But I don't, again, I know how to deal with it. I know how to process it. I know how to, it's stuff I've already dealt with.
Okay, so what nerve did the Good Dinosaur ping with you? You mentioned loss. So I'm assuming the bit with the father dying hits you in a place you don't like to talk about?
Not so much that. I mean, no, it was more, oh, man. You don't get to bill me for this, by the way.
It's perfectly fine.
No, it was more him saying goodbye to Spot.
Okay, gotcha. Admittedly, I got that was the only part that I got a little teary-eyed. But it seems to hit you on a very personal level, which is interesting.
I deal with change very badly. Odds considering, how much I moved, but just with some of my issues, and again, I believe I'm undiagnosed Asperger's syndrome. I hate change. And, death is as permanent a change as you're going to get. So, I reacted very, very strongly to that.
Okay. Why don't we, unless you've got a burning desire to keep going with this, why don't we shift and talk about the CGI? Because I know you had some stuff you wanted to talk about with that.
Yeah. Sorry. This got brought up a little bit when we reviewed Tomorrowland. Because a lot of the discussion within, one of the things that got brought up with that was that Tomorrowland had what people referred to as good CGI. I fundamentally disagree with the premise that it had good. First of all, that it had good CGI. There was an article I read, citing specifically Tomorrowland, but dealing with some other stuff as well. Truly good CGI is indistinguishable from a real-life shot. And in that sense, again, Tomorrowland falls flat on its face. I mean, honestly, the two best uses of CGI I've seen this year in theaters come from this one and Mad Max. Now, for those of you who don't know, there are a couple of sequences in Mad Max that were, and again, almost all of the effects in Mad Max are practical, all the stunts and the set pieces, but they never filmed in a canyon. Any of that stuff done in canyons or with the mountains within the background and whatnot, the mountains are not actually there. They are done digitally. Again, I had no idea watching it. And that to me is, if I don't notice it, that's good CGI.
Right.
There is a middle level of CGI that is acceptable where you can tell it's done with a computer, but you kind of roll with it because they put a lot of effort into it. And then there's bad CGI, which I hate with a burning desire. There are whole sequences in The Good Dinosaur that I almost feel like they weren't done digitally. I feel like some of these, sweeping what would be helicopter shots, they just had helicopter shots of, spaces of mountains in the Grand Tetons and then digitally put their characters over it. And I can't tell you which one it is. And that is good CGI, stuff that you cannot distinguish digital from real. That's exceeding when it comes to computer generated images. And this is, hands down, I think, the best animated movie from a visual perspective. I mean, maybe ever. I have a really hard time trying to think of any other animated movies that looked this good. This is a beautiful movie.
No, I would absolutely agree with that. I mean, just look at some of its predecessors. Peanuts was stylized. Throw that right out. That was supposed to be, let's take a comic book and animate the comic book. So forget it. It did its job, but its job was to not look realistic. It was to look like a Peanuts comic. Minions was very cartoony. Maybe it was supposed to be, but it looked like a cartoon. It looked over the top. It looked very animated. At no point are you like, ooh, this was shot in a real set or some shit like that. It was what it was. Inside Out is very colorful, and it looks pretty. It has an enormous rainbow quality like color palette, but that's just it. You can't. No one's looking at Inside Out and going, "Ooh, did they shoot this on a set?" No, it's a fucking animated feature.
Did they actually go to San Francisco for any of the? No, that never comes up.
No, everybody's animated. No one's looking realistic. So you would have to go to some of the CGI movies where there's a lot of outdoor stuff, and so I go back to a lot of the DreamWorks, like Kung Fu Panda or the Penguins of Madagascar or Madagascar. None of that looks particularly real. It all looks like animated cartoons. And again, I'm not knocking anybody. That may have been the intent, but Pixar, I feel like with the Good Dinosaur, the goal was to up the ante with the CGI, to see what they could do with it, to really push the boundaries and make it look like an animated feature shot, an animated feature with matte paintings in the background of, or matte photographs of real life landscapes. Because that's how it felt to me. It felt like, it felt more like Pete's Dragon and Who Framed Roger Rabbit than it did a strictly animated feature. And that is a hell of an accomplishment for the people who did the CGI for Pixar.
I mean, CGI-ing developing thunderclouds, how they develop. I don't even want to imagine what a pain that was to do.
Well, I mean, if you look at it, I didn't see it in 3D or anything, I saw it in 2D, but I would have loved to have actually seen this in 3D because you could actually see layers in the film. If you saw, let's say, Arlo's paw in the grass, it didn't look flat. It looked like a 3D landscape with his hand in the brush, his paw in the brush, things like that. Everything looked very layered. Everything looked, when water was rushing, if I had just shut my eyes and opened them and saw water rushing in that movie, I would have thought it was real, like I was watching a live action feature. It looks that good. So in terms of the technical aspects of this movie, it's tour de force. And I feel like they focus so much on the technical aspects that the story came kind of secondary. Like I said, it's just an average story. And I don't mean how you react.
I disagree with you saying it's The Lion King, because The Lion King is Hamlet dumbed down for children.
Okay.
And I have debated that point to death with other people, and at the end of the day, I know I'm right, so I'm happy to do so.
Well, let's go back a sec, because I say Lion King because essentially what you have is you have a kid with an issue, the parent dies, and that spawns the kid's journey, and he has to find his inner whatever. Simba had to grow up basically and learn responsibility and take on the responsibility of the kingdom like an adult, and he had to get over his guilt for his perceived responsibility in his father's death. I know he wasn't actually responsible, but he thought he was, and certainly Scar led him to believe as such. If you can come up with a better label for this kind of story, fine. But again, I'm not getting into minute details here. I'm talking about the broad brushes are the same.
The broad brush strokes are very similar. And again, I disagree, but it's not a hill I'm going to die on. It's just about perspectives. As far as The Lion King goes, it's Hamlet. King murdered by his brother. Son spurred on to take revenge by the ghost of his father, and they simplified it. They removed, Gertrude's duplicitousness. They dumbed down Hamlet's guilt and suicidal tendencies and all that stuff. Excised a couple of superfluous characters, replaced them with Disney ones. Started Simba as a kid, which is what he would have been anyway in Hamlet, but that particular discussion aside. And
I'm trying to think of another movie that starts the same way. You have a father and a son. The dad dies. Son goes on an adventure.
It's not an uncommon trope in Western Westerns. One that comes to my mind right off the top of my head, and I very much doubt anyone else is going to get this, but The Man from Snowy River comes to mind.
John Beefus from Commercial Appeal, Memphis, Tennessee, wrote this on Rotten Tomatoes. Motivated by the archetypal Disney trauma, this odd coming-of-age adventure is part frontier survival saga, part Vision Quest, and part Point 3. Okay? I guess coming-of-age adventure makes sense in terms of looking for a label for this thing. I'm sorry, I can't get away from The Lion King. And I understand what you're saying about Hamlet.
Again, it's not. The Lion King is probably the best known movie that is going to fall within these same basic parameters. And that's fine. Again, my disagreement comes from, going not even like 5 steps further, but maybe 1 step further. And it's not a hill I'm going to die on. It's not like, no, you are wrong. How dare you believe so? No, it's not that at all.
Here are some of the, I always like to read the rotten reviews. Here's a few. A plotting, punitive morality tale that owes less to whimsy of Toy Story and more to the vengeful tradition of cautionary Struwwelpeter fables. That's Violet Lavoie from AllMovie. Here's another. This comes from Kevin Marr of the Times UK. The Good Dinosaur is the animation behemoth Pixar at its most formulaic and uninspired. Okay? It's a very mean way of saying everything I've already said.
No, its most formulaic and uninspired was Cars 2, and I've been over that.
Boys like Cars. Well,
at no point did I say I don't understand why.
Burl Burlingame, Honolulu Star Advertiser. Well, I can certainly marvel at the realistic computerized water in a movie, that I said earlier. I don't go to the movies to marvel at computerized water. Oh, go fuck yourself. Good grief.
I didn't even have to say it. Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome. Jonathan Romney from Film Comment Magazine, written by Meg LaFave and with her son and others credited on story. The Good Dinosaur features the most mundane narrative of any Pixar film. Mundane because it so blatantly aspires to mythic resonance. Joe Espino, The Young Folks. There is little original or even charming in this film. The tone of the film is extremely scattered, ranging from innocuously innocent to verbally visceral. I don't know if I agree with that.
I most certainly don't. Look, this movie has issues. There's a couple I want to get out of the way. First of all, the story is, again, it's every frontier Western coming-of-age story ever, by and large. So in its bare bones, it is not exactly groundbreaking. The story also suffers because Pixar is... They have been known to, and I have to applaud them in some ways for this, if a writer, a director, or whatnot has an idea, and he starts working on it, and it's not fleshing out or coming together, they have other people they can bring on. That particular director can move on to something else, and they don't mind, reimagining and rehashing things. And this is to a large part, this benefits the animated movies because you don't have to get too far into the process to realize that maybe, okay, things aren't quite working here, let's reset. Whereas, if you've invested $100 million into a film and then, no, wait, Josh Trank is an incompetent artistic boob, you're kind of screwed. There's not a whole lot you can do at that point. You have to release something. You can't start from square one. With The Good Dinosaur, a lot of the original, the realization of some of the basic story elements was not quite coming together. They had different characters. Originally dinosaurs had like a fully realized human society, to where we are now, basically, instead of what they wound up with in this movie. Arlo wanted to be an entomologist, and his family was not supportive. There's a lot of things that got changed because it just wasn't quite gelling. Now, on the one hand, this is a good thing because the movie idea is not scrapped. You don't get a half-assed product. But you can tell when movies go through that process at Pixar, because there is inevitably some kind of artistic scarring. I mean, for as much as the talk about, what to compare this to in the Pixar, filmography, I think this is a much stronger comparison to be made to something like Brave than to, some of their, again, less... because Brave is another one that just got rehashed.
Bear. I was just saying, instead of dying, the parent turns into a bear, and she has to fix the damage she's caused, and find the stuff within. Okay, I can see that.
And I mean, even artistically, I think that's a slightly stronger comparison than some of Pixar's stuff. They've actually, prior to Inside Out, they were in a bit of a slump. I need to find their list of.
I got it. You keep talking.
Hey, I need to just find their, where is it?
I got it, man. Relax.
Okay. So, just kind of going backwards. So again, Inside Out comes along and reminds everyone that Pixar makes phenomenal films.
So their last, not counting this year, okay, because this year they returned to form. So starting with 2013, right? Their last 5 movies: Monsters University, crap. Brave.
Crap's a bit strong, but certainly a lesser effort.
Brave split a lot of people. I mean, I liked Brave, but I
liked it
there were
too.
There were a lot of people that didn't know what to make of Brave. Cars 2 is great if you're a boy child. Other than that,
Cars 2 is great if you are a male of less than 7.
Just said that.
Cars 2 is nothing but a cash grab.
So you keep saying. Then you have Toy Story 3, which is amazing.
Yeah, after Toy Story 3 was when they had kind of a slump. I mean, Toy Story 3 is just phenomenal.
Let's go back even further than that, okay? So you have, starting with Toy Story, right? Your Toy Story, great. Bug's Life, good. Toy Story 2, better. Monsters, Inc., great. Finding Nemo, great. The Incredibles, great. Cars, okay. Ratatouille, great. WALL-E is some people's favorite Pixar movie ever.
WALL-E is great.
Never saw it. Then
really? No, WALL-E is legitimately a glorious movie.
One day I will make my kids sit through it, and I will do so as well. Then you get to Up, which is a really weird picture. I'm not going through the whole Radulich family fiasco. Fucking Up again. But Up was one of those movies where people again didn't know what to make of it. Like somebody said recently, how the hell is this? How the hell is Up for children? What part of Up is for kids? The dog is for kids. The little Boy Scouts for kids. It's a weird movie. But then they come back strong with Toy Story 3, which is probably the pinnacle of Pixar. Then they sink to the bottom. They literally get to the top of the mountain with Toy Story 3 and walk off the fucking cliff, because the next one is Cars 2. They dust themselves off with Brave. They take a deep breath with Monsters University, and they jump to the top of the mountain again with Inside Out. And then they proceed to climb back down with The Good Dinosaur.
Yeah. Again, even Pixar's misses tend to be good movies, fundamentally. Again, Cars 2 being the massive exception. And this one, it falls kind of squarely in the middle of the Pixar pack.
Oh, my God. Cars 2 is a 39% on Rotten Tomatoes. But its
Cars
score is 8 minutes.
Cars 2 is an awful movie. Taken as a movie, bear in mind. It has a weak plot. Its characters are not fleshed out. The writing is the poorest Pixar has ever produced. there's very little there of narrative, of artistic, of cinematic value. It is there to get 6-year-old boys to watch the movie and then buy the product. And it succeeds at that on every level.
The Rotten Tomatoes score, if you put it in order, Toy Story 100%, Toy Story 2 100%, Finding Nemo 99, Toy Story 3 99.
Both Finding Nemo and Toy Story 3 should have been 100%. There's like one miserable malcontent out there who just decided that I want attention, so I'll post a negative review.
Up 98, Inside Out 98, The Incredibles 97, Monsters Inc. 96, Ratatouille 96, WALL-E 96, A Bug's Life 92, and then we get into the shit category. Brave, Monsters University, The Good Dinosaur, Cars and Cars 2 range from 78% to 39%. Actually, all of the ones except for Cars 2 are in the 70s. They're all either 78 or 76 or 74.
Yeah, again,
and then
Pixar has only made one objectively bad movie.
Oh, that's funny. On Metacritic, it's 57 out of 100. I am legitimately amused by this. All right, let's. But I'll tell you what, their cinema score, which is, as you pointed out to people, is just strictly based on your casual moviegoers. Nothing gets less than an A-, and the one that got the A- is Cars 2.
Again, Cars 2, for as much as I harp on it critically and intellectually, artistically, cinematically, and objectively, appealed very well to its audience. If you had a 6-year-old or so kid, and you had to kill 90 minutes, hey, Cars 2. And everyone will be happy.
Toy Story 3 made over $1 million.
Yeah. Because it's a great movie. In a great franchise that had nothing but goodwill attached to it. And 3 also had the benefit of, being so much later than 1. By the time you got to 3, a lot of people my age had kids who could go see it. So you show them 1 and 2, and then you go see 3 as a family.
Cars 2 got nominated for nothing.
Because it deserved nothing.
All right. Take me home, Jeeves.
All right. Okay, since I mentioned that the story here has a few scars, there's a couple of scenes that are unnecessary.
That's what I said. They could have cut 10 minutes out of this movie easily. This isn't Transformers: Age of Extinction where you really needed more scenes. This you could have
cut 40 minutes out of that movie, and you and I talked about that.
Tweaking your nipples there, Ron Winfree. I'm just tweaking your nipples.
No, this one, at the very least, I think 5 minutes. There's a scene where they eat fermented fruit, seriously, and they then, become a little bit intoxicated.
Yeah, that needed to go. My kids are looking at me like, what the fuck are we watching?
That could have easily gone. But on the whole, again, the story itself is not great. It's not groundbreaking. It's not the best written thing Pixar's ever produced. That's still probably Inside Out from just a writing perspective. But it's a solid addition into, what Pixar does. It appeals to kids, and as an adult, you can watch this and still be entertained by it. This was another movie where there were a couple of times I laughed, and like the rest of the theater did not. And I always feel weird about that because, and I don't know if sometimes I understand why it is. Sometimes it's an intellectual joke that goes over the heads of other people. Sometimes it's something that's maybe not meant to be funny, but because I don't mind watching people fall down stairs, I laugh at it. That type of thing. But it's a solid Pixar movie. You know what you're getting into at this point. I have very few, again, my complaints about this are twofold, and they have nothing to do with the movie. One, the asteroid that impacted the Earth was not the sole cause for the extinction of the dinosaurs. It contributed. I'm relatively sure. It wasn't. Hang on. Did it contribute? Sure. We know where we got hit. We know the effects of it. They were already dying out because, hey, the climate was changing. Wait, are you telling me that climate change is not something that only humans do? Yes, you miserable narcissist.
Can you please start your own web show? You need to bring back Mr. Wizard, and you be Mr. Wizard.
I have no idea what that is.
You don't know Mr. Wizard?
I do not.
All right. You don't watch Big Bang Theory either. Shit.
No, I don't.
I don't know what would have been a good comparison for your generation, but there was a show, I think it was on Nickelodeon, where it was like a science guy doing stuff for kids. But that was the show. Here, I'll send you the link. But yeah, you need your own YouTube show, and you need to bring back Mr. Wizard.
I will file that under, duly taken under consideration. My other gripe is turning Spot into a dog. Humans are not quadrupedal. Have never been, will never be, not physiologically possible.
Good grief.
Again, I said at the top of this, my complaints have nothing to do with the movie itself. I'm well aware of this. So, those are my only complaints. Perpetuates an inaccurate line of thought, and humans can't be quadrupeds. That's my major complaint. The movie itself is consistent within its own universe. Is it groundbreaking? No. Is it the best written thing? No, but it's solid. I have no complaints about the writing. I have no complaints about, plot holes or things of that nature. So my complaints are strictly limited to external things in this instance.
I'm sitting here and I'm making fun of you about that, and I'm like, oh my God, again with this. Shut up. Just let the movie be what it wants to be. But even my wife and I walked out of the movie going, so the dinosaurs didn't evolve in a way that gave them opposable thumbs. They're still walking on hooves, but they're farming. And somehow or other, humans evolved into dogs. And we both kind of raised an eyebrow about that, and then we immediately told each other to just shut up. It's a kids' movie.
Which is why, again, my complaints are not necessarily valid, and I freely acknowledge that in this instance.
Between now and the end of the year, if you've got kids, if you're an adult, I was going to say, if you're an adult. And you're looking for some of the masterful Pixar stuff that brings you to the theater to watch it, you can skip this one. You're not missing anything. If you've got kids, go see it. The kids will enjoy it. Go get popcorn during the scene where they get high. This does not reach the heights of, again, other Pixar movies like the Toy Story trilogy or Inside Out or Up in many ways. Or Cars.
But Cars does not reach anything. Well, no, let me rephrase. Cars 2 does not reach anything. The first Cars is a perfectly acceptable, low-grade Pixar movie.
It takes so little to get you going.
Well, yes, in some ways I am easy to troll in that respect. I'll freely admit it.
All right. Take me home, James.
All right. Next week, what are you doing next week, Mark? Is that our year-end show?
Nope. Next Wednesday. We are off unless you decide you want to review something.
I will have a look at what comes out and see if anything strikes my fancy.
We went over this already. There's nothing.
There's nothing that I was going to necessarily make you watch that if you weren't interested in. Hang on.
Movies opening this week. So here's what's opening. Macbeth, Krampus, MI5, Spooks the Greater Good, The Lady in the Van, Youth, Hitchcock Kaput, Chick Rock, which is the new Spike Lee movie. Go see that. You should.
No.
You, Robin, you should review a Spike Lee movie because I know that's your bag.
That will end so badly for everyone involved. No, the other movie that I'm going to see prior to the Force Awakens is not one we'll be reviewing, which is fine.
What movie?
I'm going to go. I want to see In the Heart of the Sea. I may regret it, but I want to.
Oh, you see if when does that come out? In the Heart of the Sea.
11th.
In the Heart of the Sea with Thor.
Yeah, I'm a Chris Hemsworth fan. What can I say? It's a biography about Herman Melville, and we'll deal with the real-life events that inspired Moby Dick.
Well, I mean, if you want to do the year-end review on the 9th, and then you want to review In the Heart of the Sea on the 16th with someone else, because I'm not going to get a chance to see it, be my guest.
Nah, our current schedule's fine. I mean, again, since nothing else of a lot of value is coming out at that point. We'll take next week off, then proceed as planned. No big deal.
Yep. All right. So next Wednesday we're off, no show. The 16th we're doing our year-end review. It's going to be a little different than you might think. We're gonna talk a little bit about movies, but we're really going to examine the year in studios. We're going to look at what movies were released by what studios. We're going to look at budgets. We're going to look at bombs in terms of we're going to split it up. There's critical bombs and then there's financial bombs. Because some movies, everyone could have gone to see it, but everyone thought it was terrible. So there were a lot of bombs this year and a lot of financial bombs. And so we're going to look at which studios, because, Universal, for example, had monster hits, Jurassic World and Fast and the Furious 7. They're also the ones that distributed Gem and the Holograms, which was a massive loss. We're going to look at stuff like that, and we'll see which studio did the best overall between hits and losses, and which studio gets the booby prize. And this is all before Star Wars comes out, so everything we talk about is going to change a week later.
Look, the only thing that's going to keep Star Wars from knocking everything off of the top earners list of the year is the short time before the year officially ends.
Right. So we'll review The Force Awakens on the 23rd. I may or may not be putting up extra content. I know we're going to spend some of that show talking about not just the movie itself, but I'll talk a little bit about the after party that I'm going to at Hollywood Studios that Disney put together and my experience with that. And share whatever thoughts my friend Tom had, who lifelong friend, both huge Star Wars fans. If you go back into the archives, we did a long road to ruin on which one was better, Return of the Jedi or Revenge of the Sith. And him and I got into one of our more famous arguments about that. And then
Can't we just say they're both equal levels of crap?
Yes, but which one was crappier?
What part of equal levels of crap did you Equal in terms of crappiness.
December 30th is our last review of the year, and that's going to be Quentin Tarantino's The Hateful Eight. Meanwhile, back in the city,
which I may or may not be lobbying to have replaced.
I'm going to see it no matter what. I love Quentin Tarantino.
It just comes out the same time as The Revenant, and I'm not sure which. I mean, I understand we'll be reviewing Hateful Eight. I'm going to, personally, I think, prefer The Revenant. But, the end of the year actually is pretty good for movies. There's a few good ones that are coming out. And then there's, Will Smith with an African accent.
No one's going to see that movie.
Look, Americans do not like the reality that football is A, a crappy sport, and B, riddled with corruption and inconsistencies by the NFL.
And I can't wait to sign my son up for Pee Wee football. Now then, before Robert makes a brain damage joke about my son that'll irritate me, on Thursday, December 3rd.
Your son will never reach a high enough level in football, amateur or professional, where brain damage will be an issue.
You don't know that. He could very well be good enough to get brain damage.
And now you're arguing your son is good enough to be concussed repeatedly and commit suicide at the age of 40.
No, leave my son alone. He's good.
You're the one who made that argument. I said it would never happen.
All right. December 3rd, Long Road to Ruin, our final show of the year. We're looking at the Mighty Ducks.
Quack, quack.
On December 4th, my father is bringing over the new couches. That's none of anyone's business. And Melissa and I are going to see NXT in Largo, St. Petersburg, Pinellas County. I'm just reading my calendar off at this point. On Saturday, December 5th, Jonas has gymnastics. Now, moving right along. On Thursday at 10:30, the final Metal Hammer of Doom of the year, Heavy Source, Ray Calista, Jules, which is the Christmas album. It's going to be fantastic. And like we said, we have we have the 2 reviews that we're doing, and then we're done. I'm also going to be at UFC Fight Night Dos Anjos versus Donald Cerrone. Go get you some. And my wife and I will be in the audience yelling, "Get you some, Donald Cerrone!"
I weep for those who are sitting around you.
It's going to be great.
Well, it's going to be great until Cerrone gets choked out in the second round. Just a thought.
Not because then we can go home early.
Hey, you're going to be happy once Dos Anjos knocks Overeem's head into the third row, and you have a good chance of catching it.
That's true. Let him go home with Overeem's head. That would be great. I'll put it on my wall.
I mean, his family will try to sue for custody of it so it can be returned to the body that will then have to be buried, but...
What is it? Possession is 9/10 of the law?
That's actually not how that phrase goes.
Whatever.
Possession is 9 points of the law. Our culture has completely distorted that phrase in its meaning. It just... bad.
When are you doing another Everyone Loves a Bad Guy, Robert?
Oh, you're trying to get me away. I think I should have one this Friday. With Krampus coming out and all, why not look at various holiday-themed villains? Because Santa's been evil a couple of times. There's a couple of movies that deal with serial killers that take on the role of Santa.
Why don't you just limit it to Evil Santa or Evil Christmas?
Well, yeah, that's kind of what I mean. I mean, I'm not going to talk about evil acts that happen to be committed on Christmas, because I'd spend an hour talking about Hans Gruber and completely ignore the spirit.
Don't get into Easter, don't get into Labor Day.
It will be limited to Christmas. Although the Labor Day slasher is one of the greatest fictional villains of all time.
Wait till fucking next Labor Day, then, for God's sake.
You don't know if I'm joking or not.
Just saying. Be synergistic.
It will focus on, again, the year-end holidays. I might talk about Golem a little bit because, I assume there's at least one person who's Jewish who listens who would appreciate the Golem being discussed.
My wife is making me celebrate Hanukkah. I don't know why. She's Protestant.
Alrighty then.
So... let's get that theme music.
I got nothing for that. All right. So again, we're off next week. We'll be back the week after that for a discussion of finances within the movie business. We will look at why some productions ballooned, how some failed so miserably, even on small budgets. Gem and the Holograms, I'm looking squarely at you. No movie with a wide release should be a financial failure with a $5 million budget. It just shouldn't happen. All right. Until next time, everybody. Real briefly, you can find me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time hosting the 411 Ground and Pound radio show. This week, man, the UFC is trying to overwork me because this coming Sunday, myself and Jeff Harris will be previewing, and that show takes live callers. Call-in information is given out at the top of the show if you want to call in and ask questions, get your opinion out there, things of that nature. We'll be previewing 3 shows. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. December 10th, 11th, and 12th. There are UFC events. The 10th is a fight night headlined by Paige Van Zandt and Rose Namajunas. The 11th is the finale of The Ultimate Fighter Season 22 that no one cares about, but the main event is awesome because Chad Mendez and Frankie Edgar are finally going to fight. Then the 12th is UFC 194, which is the big one. UFC 193 may have been the blockbuster, the Michael Bay, if you will. This one is going to be, I don't have an appropriate response yet. The Steven Spielberg, who else makes great movies?
Quentin Tarantino.
The Coen brothers. This is going to be the Fight Fans card. It's a great card. Headlined by Conor McGregor and Jose Aldo. The co-main event, that's for the featherweight belt. That Conor being the interim champ just makes me laugh because it shouldn't have happened, but what are you going to do? The co-main event is for the middleweight title. Chris Weidman and Luke Rockhold are going to fight it out. I'm really excited for that card, so this week we're previewing all of that. Week after that, we'll be reviewing all of that. So, yeah, come back for that one, too. Anyway, on those notes, with our plugs taken care of for Mark Radulich, I am Robert Winfree, reminding everyone out there to please continue to be well, be safe, and behave.